So Merry Christ Hanukkah Kwanzaamas. I'm so glad you are all here celebrating your holiday season with us. Because we talked about the season of Advent, that it is this time of peace and hope and joy. And today we're going to talk about love. And most specifically, how love builds a bridge. Love builds a bridge between the feeling of lack and the knowing of love. And don't you think it's time? Christmas is an interesting time. It is about that birth, that transformation of that Christ consciousness that's within each and every one of us. But it does tend to feel like an outer experience sometime, and the outer stuff is fun. You know, it's the lights and the music and the food and the food and the food. You know, people say it's the most wonderful time of the year. Well, it can also be the most expensive time of the year. It can be the most fattening time of the year. You know, it's just a time of year that we get into that transformational time within us. And that's what Jesus was all about, and that's what each and every one of us is all about. So it gets a little confusing. As I said, sometimes it feels like it's more about the outer than the inner, and it's okay. It happened to 3 guys that had made their transition on Christmas Eve. And they're at the pearly gates, and St. Peter's there, and he says, you know, it's the holy season. He says, you know, you're not going to get through these pearly gates unless you show me something you have that symbolizes Christmas. So the first guy fumbles in his pockets, and he pulls out a lighter. And he clicks on the lighter, and he says, this symbolizes a candle. And St. Peter goes, okay, good, go on in. And the second guy fumbles through his pockets, and he pulls out his keys, and he shakes them, and he says, these symbolize bells. And St. Peter, fine, go on in. So the third guy's fumbling and fumbling and fumbling, and he pulls out a pair of women's glasses. And St. Peter looks at him confused, and he says, now how does that symbolize Christmas? And the fellow with a little mischievous look holds up the glasses and said, these are carols. You should have seen all the other ones that I had to look at to get to that one. So it gets a little confusing, you know? We've got the candles, and we've got the bells, and we've got the carols. But what's really happening to us? What's our invitation at Christmas time? And how do we make Christmas something that's not just about December, but something that we get to experience all year round? Christmas is full of stories, and it is all about this experience of people moving across this bridge from feeling lack to knowing love. And whether it is Scrooge or George Bailey or the Grinch, they've all come in our stories to awaken from a feeling of lack to a knowing of love. And so I'm going to tell you a story. Are you willing to hear a Christmas story? Sure. Thanks. I'm talking to you. Anyway, all right. So this is the story called The Heart House. Once upon a time, there was a house that was shaped exactly in the shape of a heart. And it was a 2-story house. It had a chimney, and it had a big front door. And the front door had a knob only on the inside. And so the heart house could only open its door on the inside, but no one could open it on the outside. And the heart house was all about gift giving. So it only opened its doors a few times a year, on birthdays and on anniversaries. And on Christmas, it would open its door really wide, and it would put out all the gifts, and then it would close the door really quickly. Because the heart house had learned from its parents, you don't want to leave your door open all the time, because just anyone could wander in. So the heart house kept its door closed most of the year. And it found that even though it gave its gifts at Christmas, it was a short kind of period of feeling happy, but pretty soon it didn't feel happy again. So the heart had gone to lots of seminars and classes on happiness. It had even taken a 3-week course on the open door movement. But it found that childhood patterns were hard to change. And so it recognized that it didn't feel happy most of the time. It had also recognized that it kept its door closed because he didn't want people to wander in. Heart didn't want people to wander in that may have muddy shoes, or may want to swing from the drapes, or may want to rearrange the furniture without even asking. He didn't want any of those people in. So he kept his house sort of closed most of the time. Now, when people would come by, he'd peer out the top window and look down to see who was there to make sure it wasn't any of those people with the muddy shoes. But one day, there was a knock on the door, and the heart was very busy wrapping its Christmas presents, because that's what it did every year. And it saw there was he said, "Go away, I'm wrapping Christmas presents." Well, the knock kept coming. It got louder, and he looked out, and there was an elf outside. And he said, "Go away, I'm wrapping Christmas presents." And the elf said, "You know," and he said, "Where are you from?" And the elf said, "Well, I'm with the Santa group. But I went to the restroom, and when I came out, Santa and the reindeer, they'd all left. I must not be a very important elf, but I'm really cold out here. And I see that your house is so small I can't get in, but I wonder if I could just warm my toes by your fire." And the heart said, "Okay, I'm wrapping presents, but I'll open the door." And so he had to open the door, and the elf put his little feet in to warm. And the elf saw all these beautiful presents, and he said, "Those are just gorgeous presents that you've been wrapping." And Heart said, "Oh yeah, I only shop at the most expensive stores. My presents are the best." He said, "Really? Would you like to give the gift that would be the most adventurous and the most exciting, the best gift you could ever give?" And Heart said, "Well, I shop at all the finest stores. How could you have a gift that's better than that?" He said, "The best gift you could give would be your front door." Heart says, "My front door, are you crazy?" He said, "Not only would it be the greatest gift you could give, it's the secret of Christmas. That Christmas is all about giving gifts, we think, but if you're going to give a gift, then you have to be open to receiving a gift. That Christmas is a risk, that as we give gifts, and you give your gifts and then you close your door so quickly you don't receive." And he said, "You're not experiencing Christmas at all. That Christmas is about this risk that we take to receive as well as give." And Heart said, "But without my front door," and the elf interrupted him. And he said, "Yes, it's a danger. It's a danger to let people in that may have muddy feet, that may want to rearrange your furniture, that may swing from your drapes, that may make your life different, and maybe even a little more difficult. But even a little more difficult. But if we don't experience the receiving as well as the giving, we've lost the whole meaning of Christmas." He says, not only should you give away your front door, you should tear it off its hinges. And right then they heard a reindeer on the roof, and the elf said, "Oh, Santa's come back for me. I am important." And the elf jumps on the sleigh and he goes away. And the heart sat with this message, this thought of, maybe it isn't just about giving, maybe it's also about receiving. And 3 days later, the heart said, "Merry Christmas," as it always did. It took its door, it ripped it off the hinges, and it gave it away. It was its hardest gift to give away. It was the best gift it ever gave, and it changed its life. And from that day forward, the house became larger and larger and was the happiest and most beautiful house in all the land. And so it is. And let's take a breath together. Yeah. So how many of us operate like the Heart House? In that place of it's easy to give, and Christmas time is this time where we're all worried about having things look just perfect. But are we in that place of receiving? Are we in that place that as we say namaste to people, it's not the place of I salute the divinity in you, it's the divinity in me salutes the divinity in you. And are we recognizing at Christmas that it's that beauty within you that is expressing and is the gift giving? And are we able to receive just as well as give? As I look at this story, I recognize 3 aspects to love, to this bridge that we're building from feeling lack to knowing love.